My goodness. Okay, well, that's not supposed to happen. I'm supposed to be there. You're supposed to see me there. That's a little odd. Hold on a second here. Let me go take a look and see if. Okay, that's not the camera you're supposed to see. You're supposed to see. There we go. That's not right either. Oh, that's the wrong screen. Holy cow. Man, what on earth is going on here? So good morning, party people. Usually I have this little stream deck here that's supposed to, you click on it and magic things happen. But it looks like it must have locked up somehow. They're really cool devices. They show like an animated button of whatever it is that I want to like program onto here to do different tasks. But every now and then it just locks up absolutely solid. And then I went and switched manually instead of using the fancy pants button. And when I switched manually, I switched to a scene that I don't ever use. But long story with my scene setup. So good morning, party people, and welcome to Office Hours. One of you, CTI Geek, said, "Where's Brent streaming from?" Generally speaking, now, if you see me streaming live, it's always going to be from my home studio in Vegas. I do record streams ahead of time, like when I go off to other locations, but I just don't ever stream them live with Twitch. Greg says you should do a course on using and setting up Stream Deck. If you search for Brent Ozar Stream Deck, I actually have a blog post on it. I got started doing it back when. Even back when I lived in San Diego, I think, but I really perfected it when I went to Iceland, when Erica and I moved to Iceland for most of a year during the pandemic. SQL Pilot asks, streaming alive? Yes, so when I stream on Twitch, I do live streaming sessions. For that, I want my full camera setup, my stream deck, my streaming desk, my audio gear, and all that, and I don't bring that with me on the road. When I go on the road, I bring just this Sony camera, and it has a little Bluetooth microphone that attaches to it. It's the one you'll see me use with a little like eraser, with like small cigarette pack kind of thing right here. And I also bring a tripod around, so then that way I can record stuff, and I'll read the questions from my phone, but then they don't show up on the screen and things like that, so it makes it a little bit different. So speaking of which, I'm going on the road tomorrow, driving to, is it tomorrow? Good morning, Jim Van Allen. Yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm driving to LA for a few days. There's a Bring a Trailer alumni meeting, people who have bought and sold on Bring a Trailer. Then I was laughing. I'm up to 6 cars that I bought and sold on Bring a Trailer. Not bought and sold, but some of them I've just sold, some of them I bought on Bring a Trailer. And it's a small show. There's not a lot of us who are alumni, as opposed to like a Cars and Coffee. And they approved me to show the Speedster. So I'm driving the Speedster from Vegas to LA tomorrow. It's about a 4 to 5, really about 5-hour drive. Speedster's not a great highway car. You don't really want to go 70 in it. It's just got a little Volkswagen engine in it. It can keep up at 65, 70. I just try not to abuse it, especially going through the desert. Good day, Raymond. And so go through the desert, through like the Death Valley type area, and then into LA. Do the Bring a Trailer alumni meeting on Saturday morning. Then Eve's got a couple of neat things that she wants to hit. There's a couple of invite-only like Gucci and Louis Vuitton events that she was invited to, which will be kind of cool to go see. And then a couple of neat restaurants, and taking the dog with us this time. Although I'm driving alone, because driving the Speedster for hours on end is a miserable experience if you're a passenger. Good morning, Spitfire. A miserable experience if you're a passenger because the wind is insane. There's no real air conditioning, and it's buzzy and vibraty. It's wonderful as a driver. Like I enjoy it. It's very peaceful and zen-like. But so Eve's flying over and then meeting me in LA with the dog, because the dog would be scared out of his mind going 4 hours in the kind of car too. So what I'm doing today is, for initially in the webcast, what I'm going to do is go test my, oh, Jim says I drove my 912, but at least 912s have roofs. The roof makes all the difference, whereas a Speedster, it's got that folding fabric roof. It doesn't even, like the windows and the top don't even match up. It's not even waterproof in any way, shape, or form. So I don't even bother with the top. I've taken the top off and it stays in the garage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test the recent changes to the first responder kit. So I was working on the first responder kit this week with a client, and they couldn't change much of the first responder kit live. We weren't allowed to change it during the production window, but I kept seeing stuff where it was under real heavy concurrency, like 40,000 batch requests a second, and thread pool issues. And I'm like, I want to get this thing to respond faster. So I made changes to the first responder kit, but I did not even test them. Like, I don't even know if the thing compiles. So we're ready to do the monthly release, and I got to make sure the thing actually at least compiles and runs. Most of the time when I do this these days, I do it on my Mac. I run an Apple MacBook Pro with a Silicon processor, which means I can run SQL Server in a Docker container. And that's enough to do most of the smell tests for going live. In order to stream, though, I want to show you the tools that you're more likely to be used to, which means SQL Server Management Studio. So I've got SQL Server Management Studio running up in the cloud in a VM. I am running SQL Query Stress with one of the labs from my Mastering Server Tuning class, just to put the server under a lot of workload. Then that puts in all kinds of stuff around wait stats, the DMBs, things like that. It's been running for a while, like half an hour. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel, and then I'm going to pull up a file that's actually in the first responder kit. In the first responder kit in the GitHub repo, there's a documentation folder, and you've probably never seen this before because, yeah, you don't read the documentation. Don't feel bad, most people don't. But what this has is a list of some of the most commonly used parameters for each of those stored procedures, which is useful if I want to go through and check to see whether or not the thing actually runs and compiles. Now, I have already applied the most recent changes to the first responder kit. I put the most recent one in there that we're going to be releasing today. Well, we're going to be releasing it on GitHub today, but then the announcement on the blog will come out in like a week or two. So what I want to do is just make sure that at least it runs, and when I glance down at the result sets, I don't see anything that looks a little goofy, like things that I know not to be true on my box here. And all of this looks like it's true. All of this looks like it is correct. Next up, let's do check user database objects. Or let's do try writing it to table. I'll hit enter on here so that you can see what we do. All of the scripts can write, most of the scripts can write their output to a table like DBA tools dot whatever, and it's up to you what the database name is. But I just want to make sure that it's at least able to do that without blowing chunks. So far, so good. Blitz who is like the equivalent to SP who is active. It's not as fast. Which I ran into a lot this week. It works. It's just not quite as fast as I would like. So since that relies on active queries up and running, we're going to go ahead and run our workload while this thing runs so that I can see that it actually produces results. The fact that this takes a few seconds is a great example of what I mean by it's not as fast as SP who is active. I was running into a situation this week with that 30,000 batch requests a second client where SP Blitz who was taking 15 to 20 seconds in order to run. Now, so this is not a great answer here. So around 25 seconds to run when I've got only a handful of queries that are running. Now, granted, those queries are really resource intensive and they're really grabbing a lot of RAM. But what I just want to check and see is when it's running and it's taking a while, what's it waiting on? So to do that, one way that you could do it is to run SP Blitz who, but if it's taking a long time to run, that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start another window, and I'm going to run sp who is active in another window. I'm going to do like go 5, and I might even do throw a wait for in there. We'll say wait for delay 1 second. So what this is going to do is it's going to run sp who is active, wait a second, run sp who is active, wait a second. So that way, while I'm running sp blitz who, I can get a rough idea for what this query, what sp blitz who is waiting on. Now, so over on the right hand side, what I expected to see was sp blitz who somewhere in here in these results. Error message is name cannot begin with the greater than character. What? That's a bug in sp who is active. That's not something that I expected to be troubleshooting at the moment. Let's go make sure that we have the latest version of sp who is active. That's certainly not something I want to troubleshoot if I can avoid that. So we'll go sp who is active, go to the downloads, go over to GitHub, and 12, I don't know that 12 is the latest. I could have swore Eric Darling had a more recent issues than that, or more recent. Let's Google Eric Darling sp who is active. I could have swore he had. Yeah, because he has. Let's page down. Who is active logging? Yeah, that's not what I want. Okay, he's got all kinds of other stuff, so let's go back a little. He says, I'm officially a maintainer of sp who is active, and that was on 2022. So, let's see, working on issues over there. That is on a mechanic, says code was last updated in 2021. I could have swore he's coded stuff since then. Maybe there's multiple branches? No? I could have swore there was a later release than that. All right, well, let's go ahead and grab that then. Oh, pull request 9. There are 9 pull requests. Oh, he had it. Whoa! Okay, wait a minute. So he had a pull request 3 weeks ago. Let's take Adam's pull or Eric's pull request. Let's go switch over to that. Let's go to the file. Let's view that file. Did I go in there? Raw. Copy everything out of there. Let's come out to here. New query window. Paste. Execute. Let's make sure we got at least the latest who is active. Then let's try that again. First, let's just try sp who is active with nothing, without sp blitz who running. And we'll see if we're getting any of the issue. Okay, so if we run sp who is active without sp blitz who running with the new version, seems to work okay. We're not getting any errors. Let's try this again while sp blitz who is running. Execute. And it would be really funny. It does! Oh, great. Oh, this is not something that I expected to troubleshoot here today. Okay, the fun of doing live debugging, and of course, is you find the bugs. So what's happening is on the left-hand side, when sp blitz who runs, sp who is active throws an error about executing a batch, about a name cannot contain something. All right, let's see if it has something to do with expert mode. Let's not run expert mode. Let's just run sp blitz who. Execute. Oh, and then that's so funny. Somebody in chat, B Squidward, says, what about running without expert mode? Let's go take a look and see if that does it. Ooh, no. So that's interesting. So something else happened here. Notice how it did the first error and then it didn't have any others. That's because sp blitz who ran faster when it wasn't doing expert mode. So what I'm going to say is go 5. Just so that I can get it to run repeatedly, and we'll see if, yeah. So even when expert mode isn't running, who is active throws an error, okay? So what's the query that sp blitz who is running that is causing the error? SPBlitz has a debug mode where it'll dump out the contents of the query. Let's try running the diagnostic query that SPBlitz builds on the fly. Let's try running that outside of SPBlitz and see if we can reproduce the error. Now keep in mind at this point we're not necessarily troubleshooting an error with SPBlitz, but I found an error and I want to track down what's going on with it. So let's get it. We're going to do SPBlitz debug equals 1. And then execute that. Then over on the messages tab, we're going to get the query that runs. I'm going to go copy all that out. Copy. And I happen to know from experience just recently that in here there is this query, this line right here. This is relying on a temp table that we don't have right now because we're not using that. I'm just going to in SPBlitz this is created independently. I'm going to simply comment that out, and then everything else should work okay. Get the little break around piece there. Everything else should work okay. Let's hit execute on it just to make sure that the query actually works. Okay, so the query works. Now, when that query is running, can I run SP who is active, and does it get an error? It gets the error. Okay, so the query even running without being involved in SPBlitz or SP who is active errors, it gives me an error. Now, where is that error? I don't know. I haven't ever debugged SP who is active because it's so freaking hairy. There's so much going on inside of SP who is active. But let's go take a look at the stored proc and see if it has anything along the lines of a debug parameter. Let's see here. So it says show on SPID, get full, get outer, get, output. All right, let's see if there's a debug. 0 of 0. Okay. Okay, how about, is there anything for help? There's a help command, but that doesn't do me any good. Okay, so because I don't see anything about debugging, I'm just going to go ahead and file it as an issue in GitHub. I'm not going to do it live on the screen now with y'all because I don't have GitHub logged in a window in this VM. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to grab the info that I need in order to reproduce it, and I'm going to copy paste it into files. So we'll say query that causes error.SQL, and then the error that comes up, we'll say copy. Oops, new, paste, error, txt. Okay, cool. All right, so clearly, if SPU is active, is going to throw an error. It's not going to give us a good idea of exactly what's going on inside that piece of code while it's running slowly. I'm not really trying to troubleshoot slow executions of SPBlitz as a part of this. Really, I just want to make sure that it actually works. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Kind of fun how this stuff happens. So SPBlitz worked okay. I'm not happy, not thrilled with the length of time that it takes to run, but I also don't want to do a before and after check on this particular VM here. Let's see here. We'll test that it will output to DBA tools. Very observant readers will notice that I'm not actually checking the contents of the output tables. I should probably do that. Let's go see view, object explorer details. Let's go drop these tables. And it's running, my VM's running a little slow now because I got that load test running. And we'll get rid of that. Delete. And get rid of them. All right. And now let's go back over and run SPBlitz to table, and we'll say select star from DBA tools, DBO blitz. after that finishes, and we'll go take a look at what the output of that looks like. To make it run a little bit faster, I'm going to go ahead and cancel the load test just while we do the blitz one. Do 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 do. Okay, good. There we go. That's all good. We got results out of that table. Let's go do blitz who, and we will run that to table. For that to put any results out, we're going to need to have our first or our load test running. So we'll go and do that. Why do I think SP Blitz Who is slow? I think SP Blitz Who is slow because of a memory grant issue. I think that it's probably asking for a memory grant and waiting in order to get it. That the other queries have to finish before SP Blitz Who can get its memory grant in order to execute. I don't think it's actually doing anything, which is different than the problem that I hit with the client this week. SP Blitz Who was actually doing things. I didn't performance tune SP Blitz Who this week, and that's kind of next on my radar. DBO Blitz Who. Tuning it is going to be really tough, though, because the what? Blitz Who results. Because the reason why it's slow is y'all are SQL Server people. You'll probably find this interesting. Let me show you the execution plan for SP Blitz Who. So we verified that it does put results out to disk. So let's go take... Oh, goodness. Let's go take a look at the execution plan for SP Blitz Who, just so that I can show you what it's doing. Hopefully I get exactly the same shape. Oops. Why did you... What? Include actual execution. We have it turned off. Inside the proc, it's set to turn it off. Let me run it with debug mode equals 1. Debug equals 1. Debug equals 1 will dump out the contents of the table, or out the contents of the query. So let's copy that all out. Copy, new paste. You might say, Brent, it's the recompile down at the bottom. It's not that. It is comment you out and execute you. And the client that I was dealing with this week, hundreds of open sessions, sometimes thousands of open sessions, and SQL Server, that's the query plan of the query that's slow, not the query plan of SP Blitz Who. And what SQL Server was choosing to do was look at all of the locks that were being held open by a session. Let's see if I can find it in the execution plan. There should probably be, I bet there's a control F that works on locks. So along, it wasn't functions though, I don't think. Oh, why am I doing it that way? Let's go over here. Query stats, wait stats, sessions, waits, XML. Maybe it was. Oh, I was on a different version of SQL Server, so I know it's got a slightly different query involved in there. But essentially what it was doing is it was looking at the locks first across all of the sessions and then joining that to the rest of the session results. And I was like, oh, that isn't going to be fast. I'm going to have to figure out how to do a different join order or force the join order with SQL Server or break the query up into two pieces, which I'm not really thrilled about either because it's dynamic SQL. But so fixing that one's going to be kind of hard work. Okay, so coming back over, we know SP Blitz Who works. Let's run SP Blitz first. I believe I still got my load test running. Yep, I do. So SP Blitz first. When I execute SP Blitz first, I actually want to go over to the Messages tab. When I was tuning SP Blitz first this week, I was literally watching messages go by for one check at a time. This poor server is absolutely getting hammered, and it's getting hammered in terms of CPU, so I should probably... I didn't have debug on. Okay. Okay, woohoo. So it works. It puts out messages or puts out results, which is all cool. But I'm going to show you the thing I was looking at this week when I was working with it. Thing I just started to talk through. So with a lot of our stored procs, they have debug options, and they all do slightly different things because everything in the first responder kit was basically written originally by different people. SP Blitz Cache was written by Jeremiah Peshka. SP Blitz was written by me. Kendra Little wrote SP Blitz Index and so forth. But SP Blitz first, it has this list of I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, all in order. So what I was doing on this high volume server was I would hit SP Blitz first and I would just watch these numbers go by and I would note which ones were taking longer and longer time. What I want to do at some point in the future here is build a routine into SP Blitz first so that when I run debug, it'll say each one of these checks took this many milliseconds at the end of it so I can get a better idea for performance tuning. I don't think a lot of people run it with debug equals 1. It shouldn't affect the wider public at large. Okay, so that works. I'm okay with that. SP Blitz first send startup, make sure that returns results, and then we'll dump it out to a database as well. Make sure that doesn't throw any errors. Okay, that worked. Let's run that one. Make sure he doesn't throw any errors. Real low standards, right? And you might be asking yourself, okay, Brent, how come you don't do like unit testing? How come you don't have an ability to programmatically test this stuff every time you do a release? It's because it's really hard to mock up SQL Server's DMV contents. You can't just switch out DMV contents the way you do with user tables. So I'm a huge fan of testing. I think that everything should be unit tested if it's possible and practical. Unfortunately, with tools that query system tables, it's just not practical. Okay, so that worked. That one worked. Let's hit SP Blitz Index. We'll run, I'm just going to run each of these one at a time. The different modes for SP Blitz Index just return different result sets. 0 is the default diagnostic result set. That works okay. Mode 1 does size analysis, I think, if I remember right. I hardly ever used Mode 1. Yep. Mode 2 does detailed, like Excel, copy-paste friendly output, listing all of your tables. Mode 3 is a list of missing indexes. Mode 4 is a detailed analysis. Has all kinds of extra warnings in it. We can call it for one table at a time. That works. SP Blitz Cache. I don't do sort order equals all these days. I just run it straight to a table and make sure that that works. And then I'll run it for one specific sort order. And then we also changed SP Blitz Lock, so I'm going to run that. And yay! All right. It didn't return any results, which could be catastrophic, but I know my workload in here doesn't produce any deadlocks. Okay. So I'm comfortable at least enough that it's ready to release over on GitHub. The way that I usually do my release cycles, there, the button actually worked that time. The way I usually do my release cycles is that I will release, I'll do a release on GitHub and I'll mention it in the First Responder Kit Slack channel, but then I don't publish the blog post for another day, 2, or a week after that, just to make sure that the early adopters over in the Slack and people who get it directly from GitHub can sort of sniff out in case that there's anything catastrophic going on. All right, now let's go through and hit some of your questions. Let's see what y'all had in terms of questions over at PollGab. Let's see here. First off, we have, let me go refresh PollGab because the user interface is a little borked there. Let's get that back on. There we go. Make it a car and call it a Brentley says, let me record the questions. Make it a car and call it a Brentley says, thanks for everything you do. You're welcome. I was wondering about your opinion on using regex with a SQL query and its performance. So regex, just like anything else, is a tool. And you can use a tool for good or you can use a tool for evil. Generally, things that you put in the from and below in a query. From and below, meaning if you use it in joins, if you use it in filters like where clause, if you use it in group bys, if you use by order by, things like that, have the potential to make a query slower. If you put it in the select, still has a potential to make the query slower, but the usual impact is not quite as bad if you set aside things like scalar user-defined functions. RegEx is a little different. If you put it in the from and below, yes, it still has a high percentage chance that it's going to make things bad. If you put it in the select, what do you want it in the select for? Go do it on the application tier. So the fact that somebody's doing it in SQL Server makes me think it's in the from and below. I am not usually a fan. Most of the time when I investigate query performance on those, it's causing table scans because it's whatever they're doing with regex is not sargeable. But I would have to see your implementation of that in order to give you a good answer. Yeah, I'll stop there. I could always go a long way on some of these. Koritt asks, hi Brent, CHECKDB runs a bunch of other things against a database. Could I run each of these calls separately and give the same level of validation? Here's the thing. Most of the time when I see people trying to get fancy with CHECKDB, they don't know what they're doing and their code has bugs. Of all of the places where you want to get fancy, why would you get fancy when you're checking for corruption? Do your job. Quit trying to do pirouettes on your job. Quit trying to have flair or jazz hands with your job when it comes to backups, restores, and checking for corruption. Do what you're supposed to. If you're saying, well, Brent, I need so much performance and I can't get that over in production, restore onto a separate server. Since SQL Server 2019 came out, the licensing, as long as you're covered under software assurance, gives you a free SQL Server on which to do things like restore testing and CHECKDB. Go use that. Quit trying to be fancy. This is the Twitch content I needed. You're welcome. Now, Black Lotus says, not even a DBA officially. I just love hearing you talk about SQL. Oh, great. I'm glad I could be of service. Next up, we have Peter who says, for patching purposes, is it safe to simply reboot a failover clustered instance after patching, or should you always shut down the agent and shut down the instance prior to rebooting? For me, I want to make sure that there's no user activity on it when I patch. What that means then is that you patch the passive node. You patch the passive node first. And in that case, you don't have to worry about agent in the instance. It ain't running. Patch the passive node, make sure that it comes back up and everything's cool. Only if everything's cool do you fail over to it, and then you patch the formerly active node and you don't fail back. You just bounce back and forth so that when you were on this one before the patch, now you're over on this one. You only have to do one failover, and users will have less outages and downtime as opposed to trying to fail back onto the other node. Next up, fellow early riser says, does your early to rise cause early to bed? Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm usually in bed by between 8 and 9 p.m. Have you always been an early riser? Yeah, in high school it was like 6 a.m. and all through life it's continuously gotten earlier, like crept earlier every year to the point where now this morning I was up at 2:41 a.m. No alarm, just 2:41. Sat in bed for like 5 minutes deciding whether or not I'd try to sleep in. Couldn't do it, and then just got up, took a shower, and off I go. Tom says, have you ever encountered a database that hasn't been designed properly? No. No, Tom, every database I've ever worked with has been flawless. Tom, seriously, come on, what kind of dumbass question? Ooh, I gotta watch my language. What kind of dumb question is that? Golly, I will confess that I swear a lot. People who meet me in person are always surprised by how much I swear, and I try to keep it clean for the online streaming crowd. I swear constantly. So have you ever encountered a database that hasn't been designed properly? Of course. Dude, no one calls me when they're happy. People call me when they're upset. If you have, how did you deal or react to the situation? You go to war with the army that you have, not the army that you want. I would be a terrible consultant if I said, well, as you can see here on the screen, this data isn't normalized. What you need to do is you need to start over from scratch. Forget all these tables. Rewrite them all. Redesign them all. Let's just scrap the application and start over from scratch. You don't have that capability. It doesn't work that way. You need to get to the finish line as quickly as possible. It's just like, Tom, your personal hygiene. Is it perfect? No, not even close. But we have to deal with you anyway, right? We just do the best job that we can. Also, please apply deodorant. Next, Carnac asks, I enjoyed watching you evaluate each database administrator's top weight stats. Can we look forward to a future episode of that? Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I do them on demand. What you can do is you can go over to BrentOzar.com and click Consulting up at the top of the screen. You'll click Consulting up at the top of the screen, and then we have a personalized session where I review your weight stats and I help you as a company get past your bottlenecks. So there you go. Anytime you'd like to hop in and do that. Benji asks a good question. Is there a consideration for bringing constant care over to Postgres? You know, when we first wrote Constant Care, the idea behind it was an application that would run diagnostic queries, dump the data into JSON files, and then push them up into the cloud. And the application didn't have any logic in it. The client application didn't have any logic in it to tell you whether something was good or bad. All our rules-based processing was done up in the cloud. In theory, we could do that for anything. We could do it for MySQL, Oracle, Postgres. The application would just connect to that database platform, run diagnostic queries, export the results, send them up to the cloud, and then we'd give advice up in the cloud. So when I first wrote it, I was like, okay, that's on my radar that maybe someday we could extend it to other platforms. The problem is you also need expertise on those platforms in order to deliver the advice. I don't have expertise on any other platform that I would dare charge money for. Do I use MySQL and Postgres? Sure, but would I ever take it? I don't want to say I would never take a consulting gig on it, but signs point to no. I would feel like a complete sham, although I'm sure I felt like a complete sham the first couple of years that I was working with SQL Server as well. But it's just not something that's on our radar at this time. It is theoretically possible, just the hassle to reward ratio like you talk about there isn't really worth it. Next question was, TJ says, we're getting constant deadlocks with XP user lock calls within SP get app lock. Do you have recommendations on how to improve the deadlocks? Yes. Don't take app locks. Boy, that sucks to hear, doesn't it? But what app locks are is they're transactions that you're trying to manage, and that is going to take a hell of a lot longer to get rid of those locks. It's kind of like walking into the grocery store, go over into the cereal aisle and saying, attention everyone, I'm going to take a lock on this part of the cereal aisle until my transaction is complete. And then you're going to go over to the beer aisle, because that's what you like to eat together is beer and cereal. You're going to go over and take a lock on the beer aisle. You're going to go over and take a lock on the microwave popcorn aisle, and then you're going to finish your transaction. That's idiotic. It's going to be slow. What you should do is just go get exactly the item that you need, like the row, get the item that you need, and get the heck out of the aisle. Try to minimize the length of time that you take to hold transactions open and the size of the locks that you hold. Whereas often when people do SP get lock, they're like, all right, first we're going to get a customer, then we're going to start an order, then we're going to check the products, then we're going to add line items, then we're going to check the customer's credit. And of course, the number of things that they're doing inside there is just way too large. Could you do get app lock and set app lock, whatever the dang things are called, and actually write something fast? Yeah, I just don't ever see anybody doing it. And then the last question in the queue right now is, how was Iceland? I loved it. It was absolutely fantastic. It was amazing. It's the size of Ohio in the United States, but it's only got about 250,000 people in it, most of which are in Reykjavik, the largest city at the very corner of Iceland. The rest of the country is wide open and gorgeous. Amazing geography, incredible sights. And I'm going back there in August, I believe, just for a few days, doing a camper van trip next time around. But I'm sure I'm going to end up going back for somewhere between 3 and 9 months in either 2024 or 2025, depending on how my schedule goes, because I absolutely loved it. Not this year for sure, probably not even the first half of next year, because my backyard renovation is finally getting close to complete. Bunch of things in my life are happening that are kind of checking things off, like the Ferrari and the Porsche 356 restorations should be done by the end of the summer. My backyard renovation should be done by the end of the summer, putting in a sunken living room, a hot tub, TV wall, waterfall, all kinds of stuff. Um, which at the end of the day, it's going to make being in Vegas a fantastic place for me to be. So it doesn't make me want to go elsewhere for extended periods of time and spend money elsewhere for extended periods of time. It's just going to be a lot of fun to be here. Plus, I got like a really nice home theater. I have a 150-inch screen. I've got a big, huge wine bar. The rest of the renovation in the bar finished a couple of months ago. So it's just a nice place to throw parties. So I'll be sticking around here for a while. C17 says my dad has a 65 356, second owner. Very nice. I am the third owner of this one. It's a 64 356. The prior owner had it for 52 years, and she passed away last year. It sat in a garage for the last 20 years. So it's down at Gowden Porsche in Vegas getting restored. And restored is the wrong word, but when an engine sits for 20 years without being run, she just literally drove it into the garage one day, parked it, and that was it. Didn't prep it at all, so there was rust in the gas tank. Some of the cylinders had some problems with them, not rusted together, thank goodness. But now, just what happens when you leave an engine in place for 20 years and breaks? All the brakes and tires have to be replaced. But so that should be done, hopefully within about 2 months tops. And not doing anything to the outside, leaving the outside totally original. And the interior, we do have to redo. We redid the driver and passenger at the front seats because they were original. They had wear enough on them that they had worn through the seats, and you could see the foam. So excited to get that one back. All right, that's it for this week's office hours. I will be back next Wednesday, back here in Vegas, and I will see y'all then. Hope you had fun, hope you learned something, and see you next time. Adios.